Hi, so welcome here to Lessons for Reparenting Daily. Today we have Lauren with us, who I found out over Instagram, who is also a reparenting coach and helping people through issues of codependency and finding empowerment in themselves again. And today she's going to share with us some of her insights on reparenting, what she has discovered in her journey, in her professional experience, and to give us some hope and inspiration. So would you like to give us a brief introduction?
Sure. Thank you so much for
Thank you.
having me. Um, I am a licensed professional counselor. I am licensed in Pennsylvania in the United States, and I've been doing that for about 10 years. I am also an emotional wellness coach, which allows me to work with clients across the globe, which I really, really love. The use of technology has really opened up access to more resources, which is wonderful. And in my past, I was a K through 12 certified school counselor and therapist. So I worked with kids of all different ages and their families in the school setting.
Okay.
So I do have experience with the younger kids as well. But right now, I work exclusively in the online space. I do individual and group coaching and therapy. And then I also do trainings and presentations, workshops, speaking engagements, which I really enjoy as well.
That sounds wonderful. It's great to hear about your experience and how you've really grown from working with children. I guess that's where you started out, your first job. It's an interesting place to start out your career. You must have seen a lot there. What was one of the best takeaways from that experience working with the K through 12?
Yeah, I really feel like I grew a lot, both professionally and personally, in working with the kids. And it's interesting because it really goes to show how the youngest people can be our greatest teachers. I think my takeaway most often from my experiences with kids was that what we say to them becomes their own inner voice. So the
Mm,
people around them, the adults, how we speak to and treat them becomes the way that they think about and see themselves and their place
mm,
in the world. And so the more that we can pour into them, listening, validating, displaying respect and compassion, that can really shape a lot of their behavior and mindset all the way into adulthood. And I saw that
for
when I
sure.
started working with adults, that they would
Yeah.
often reference things that happened in their youth and how much of an impact it continued to have on their behavior and their, thoughts about themselves and their place in the world.
Very much so. I agree with that as well. It's one thing that one question that comes to mind when I hear this is well, first of all, when did you first hear about the inner child healing? Was that before you started with your first job in the K through 12, or did that come after?
Yeah, good question. It actually came kind of midway through. So I
Okay.
worked about 7 years in a variety of different school settings. And so I didn't know anything about it when I first, entered the work scene. And then I actually stumbled across a workshop and it's mentioned inner child healing, reparenting, and I had no idea what that was. I had never heard that term because they didn't
Yeah.
teach it in our graduate school programs. And so I was intrigued and I had been doing my own personal therapeutic work, talking through things from my past and how it shaped me. And so it really clicked. And that's when I dove in and started doing a little bit more research on it and started working myself on inner child healing. And
Huh.
I did that first before then working on it with the adults when I went into, more of the private practice therapy
Understood.
setting.
Understood. This is a really beautiful experience. How this has just kind of come organically, right? And there are so many things. I personally don't have a master's degree in psychology or therapy. I do have three other master's degrees, but in different topics. So all of my learning has really been self-taught and self-driven. And in my discussions and listening to other podcasts, it seems that there's a lot lacking in the programs that are generally available for psychology coaching therapists.
Yeah.
I understand that there's not much time spent on CPTSD generally. There's normally not so much time emphasizing somatics, with the mind-body connection being extremely important in the healing of trauma. And really, some people don't even get the basic trauma education
Right.
to
Right.
be able. I mean, and the inner child healing, that's such a it's such a foundational piece, you know. I would almost wonder how can they miss it from these programs, you know?
Right, right.
Yeah,
Yeah, a lot of what I do actively with my clients now, they are techniques I learned after graduating from my
yeah,
program.
yeah.
And a lot of the continuing education that I do actually doesn't even qualify as continuing education for my
Oh,
license, but I
really?
do it anyway because
Oh,
it's the topics that I really feel I need to get stronger in and that
um,
the clients really could benefit from. So yeah, there's definitely a lot that you learn, I think, once you're out in the field and you're open to more resources
yeah,
that you can expand upon. But yeah, I agree with you. A lot of what I use on the day to day
yeah.
I learned outside of.
After. Yeah. And why do you think that those courses or trainings that you're taking related to reparenting are not counted towards your continuing education credits? I don't know exactly which ones are not included, but are they the ones related to inner child and reparenting?
Yeah, inner child work, a lot of somatics, as you mentioned,
Okay.
and then even like work around people pleasing, boundary setting,
Wow.
codependency. And I don't know exactly why they don't count, other than there's just very strict regulations on who needs to teach them, the length of
Hmm.
time they need to be, and there's
Okay.
just a lot of regulations to technically be counted as a continuing ed course. Um,
Understood.
and so a lot of what I'm doing might be, 1 or 2 hour workshops. It might be
Sure.
reading books. It might be, you know, downloading different worksheets, and
Sure.
that just doesn't fit their criteria, but
Understood.
certainly well worth the time to
Yeah.
put into it because it is really cool to watch how these techniques have transformed my own life and that of my clients. And for people who say, I've been in therapy forever and I've made some progress, but I just feel stuck. Like I want to believe these new beliefs. They
Yeah.
make sense to me logically, but I
Yeah.
cannot get my heart to match up with my
Match it.
head.
Yeah.
I have found inner child work to be the thing that really moves the needle
Yeah.
and gets it to kind of click and feel true because you're going back to the source
Indeed.
of the wound and you are exploring that with gentleness and compassion and then offering yourself the support that you needed and that you didn't always receive. And that tends to make such a difference in your day to day now. So many
Mm.
times clients will say, I don't understand how talking about something that happened when I was 7
Yeah.
is going to make me feel differently today in my interactions. And I said, just be open to it, give it a try because I've
Yeah.
seen it work so many times and it's
Yes.
really powerful.
It is really powerful. I mean, all of those emotions that are not processed and not released, they remain stuck in your body and they have deleterious effects across your lifespan, you know, and these chemical processes that happen as a result from, for example, stored rage or stored bitterness, they can also have other cascading effects, such as what is the term when your genetics
Oh,
goes out,
epigenetic.
active epigenetic activation, you know, triggering some epigenetic changes based on your, you know, situation versus if you had a different emotional experience, you could trigger a different epigenetic
Right.
reaction. So yeah, I agree that that's so important as part of the reparenting journey. What is in terms of how you approach deconstructing those internal internalized negative core beliefs that the inner child is holding on to, what are some of the practices that you find are most effective to help people really get to those and not just on the surface level, but actually start to get in touch with the subconscious? Do you rely on things such as hypnosis or EMDR? I don't know. My experiences with EMDR for CPTSD has it's not really the most effective, I think, because of the long period of time and my lack of access to concrete memories. But I think
Sure.
some people have different experiences. But for me personally, I didn't find it to be the most effective for the long time ago traumas, you know.
Right, right. No, I've heard that feedback as well. Not being trained in it myself, I can't speak
Sure.
too much to the effectiveness of it for various, areas that people are working on. But I will say for inner child work, some of the things that I have found effective personally and with clients would be I like simple, short exercises that you can commit to and do consistently. Because I
Yeah.
have found that that is what moves the needle
Yeah.
versus something that's more in depth that we do every once in a while. So I really try to make this accessible even to people who are really busy or who have, a full household and a lot of
Yeah.
responsibilities. But I always recommend at the beginning to find a picture of yourself from when you were young. And this typically I say to do any age from birth until about 12 or 13,
Okay.
because the inner teenager is kind of its own separate work that often has different things to tackle. But if you can
Okay.
choose you could choose a time period in which you remember struggling or it being difficult, or you could choose a time period that you feel a little more comfortable accessing because maybe it's not so intense and traumatic to start off with and then ease your way back. And certainly if there's significant trauma, I often
Mhm.
recommend doing these things with a therapist versus
Or-
trying to navigate it completely on your own because you just don't know what's going to come up. And it's
Yeah.
always good to have extra support, especially from a
Exactly.
trained trauma professional. But to get a picture of yourself and to just put it by your bedside, or if you have it on your phone, screenshot, and you pull it up at least once a day and you look into your eyes in that picture and you say, hi, little, whatever your first name is or
Mhm.
whatever nickname you went by as a kid, right? So for me,
Yeah.
hi, little Lauren, and smile and just check in. How you doing today? I hope you
Yeah.
have a great day. And maybe that's all you do
Yeah.
right at the beginning. And then over time, you're developing this relationship with little
Okay.
you that you can then go deeper and provide more and more of the support that little you needed and didn't always get from the adults around you. And that involves some work of figuring out what are some of those core negative beliefs that keep coming up for me that I haven't
Yes.
been able to shift. What are those
Yes.
things that just continually trigger me and bring up really intense emotions, even when the
Mm.
situation doesn't warrant it,
It
right?
doesn't
So
want
it's
to.
doing some exploration, getting curious, and then figuring out, okay, what does this little version of me need to hear and how can I be the loving parent? And so, it
Yes.
may, if you're familiar with the four S's, that's kind of the universal human needs that we all have. And that would be to be safe, to be seen, to be soothed, and to be secure.
Okay.
And so a lot of times our negative beliefs fall into one of those categories that we aren't safe
Okay.
or it's not safe to be us, that our feelings aren't valid, that we don't deserve to be seen and heard and listened to and respected, that we don't deserve to be
Mm.
accepted, that we're not worthy, right? They
That
all
sounds
will fall
familiar.
under. And maybe it's multiple of those, right? Because often it's very layered. So
Yes.
then being able to check in and say on a daily basis, sometimes it's a couple times a day if you're having a
Mm.
difficult day and you're feeling a lot of intense emotions, you may be checking in with little you 3 times a day, taking only maybe 30 seconds to do that and just saying, I'm here for you. And think about what you would have wanted to hear from an adult when you were struggling. Think about maybe what you would say to a loved one in your life now if they were struggling, because we're often
Yeah.
really good at giving this compassionate support to
Exactly.
others, but we
Yes.
don't have practice giving it to ourselves because we didn't
And
receive it.
yeah.
Right. So
Exactly.
really dialing into what does little me need to hear? And then you'll start to notice when you're getting triggered throughout the day. That is
Okay.
little you stepping in and trying to take over. And so that's when you want to pause and say,
Okay.
oh, Lauren, I hear you. Thank you for trying to keep me safe and protect me. I've got your back. I'm the adult now. I'm going to handle it. You can go back to being a little kid and playing and having fun like you deserve. I got this, but thank you so much, right? Because you're telling that little version of you who didn't have protection, who had to
Mm.
step up, you're
Yeah.
saying, I'm the wise adult. I'm the loving parent for you now. And you
Okay.
can count on me because I'm checking in on you every day and I'm reminding
Yeah.
you that you matter and that your
Mm.
feelings are valid and that I see you and that I love you just for who you are, right?
Yeah.
And at first you might feel this is weird. I'm talking to myself. I don't want to
Yeah.
say these nice things to myself. You have to little by little
Yeah.
anyway. And it will start to become more automatic and normal and natural. It's new. So it's uncomfortable. It's
Yeah.
unfamiliar, right? So I
Indeed.
like the picture activity. I also like writing a letter to your younger self as
Yeah.
a way to kind of check in and say some of the things that you really yearned for as a child. Sometimes putting it in writing is just really powerful. I have some clients who write a letter and then they read it out loud to their picture every
Yeah.
day. And that has been very powerful. And then the last thing I would say is there are meditations out there that allow you to meet your inner child through a guided visualization. So if you're like, I don't
Oh,
know what to say,
yeah.
I don't know where to start, you can search for those online. They're free and you can really
Sure.
connect in, and it will walk you through meeting your younger self, putting your arm around them, holding their hand, sitting next to them, and really saying some beautiful things to them. And those have been known to bring up quite a lot of emotions.
Yeah.
It can be really powerful, especially I've had clients who will go out in nature and something about, the
Mm,
grounding properties of
yes.
nature, really enhancing their visualization. So just some ideas. There's so many different ways you can form a
Yeah.
relationship with your younger self.
Yeah, many different exercises. You're right. There are so many different exercises, and books, workshops, coloring books, for example, so that you can even do the non-dominant handwriting, for example.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, what is another one? Sometimes I try to I have a specific journal where I write down all of the positive, happy childhood memories that I can remember. So that's the one trick that I found has been quite helpful also. Um,
Yeah. Oh, I like
what?
that. I like that.
Yeah,
And I do want to say
nice.
too, there's a lot of people out there who cannot remember much of their childhood. Very
I know.
typical, especially when there was trauma, and that's your brain's way of protecting you. But I like to always remind people you do not need to have actual memories in order to do reparenting. And that's what's really cool about it, is
Mm,
that you really want to connect in with how you felt more so than what made you feel that way. And you also want to connect in with how you wanted to feel. And if
yes,
you can focus
yes.
on that, you can actually move the needle, even if you don't have any actual vivid memories. And I think that's really helpful for people who've experienced trauma, because sometimes exploring those memories can really create some overwhelming physical
And
responses that
indeed.
are not, oh, we're not always ready for. And so this is a gentle way of healing
Yeah,
that
yeah.
doesn't require reliving really horrific
Reliving.
events.
Yeah, sometimes the reliving part is I'm kind of split because I've read some mixed research. Some people who are pushing this idea that spending so much time to relive those experiences can actually cause re-traumatization
Sure.
and
Yes.
heightened, internal dysregulation that can really last for days or weeks, depending on how
Yes.
resourced that individual is at the time.
Correct.
And so that's something that I experienced firsthand in the
Mm.
past few
Yeah.
years working with different therapists. And so I'm starting to yeah, figure out how that works because I'm naturally someone who wants to jump in and just take everything on and get everything done. I had a burnout, and even to recover from my burnout, I was doing the multitasking and multiple massages a week and Reiki. It's like, what are you doing? It's
Doing
like,
everything to try
yes,
to
to try
heal, but
to
then burning yourself out in the process to
exactly.
heal.
It's like you're staying in the circle.
Mhm.
Yeah, yeah, that's good to notice. One other thing I wanted to ask, yeah, maybe I'll start with this question first. The differences between focusing on the inner teen versus the inner child.
Yeah.
Um, what, in your perspective, what are some of the distinctions and the needs and then the approaches that you would take based on those different needs? So you're helping
Yeah,
a
yeah,
client.
great question. Because I don't think we hear as much about the inner teenager as we do the inner child nowadays. So,
Uh,
what I have found is the inner child, the younger version of ourself, often a lot of needs a strong, stable adult saying, "You are safe. You are not
okay.
alone. I am with you. I hear you, and I'm I'm taking care of you," right? Because as
Yeah,
children, we are completely dependent upon the adults for our survival.
yeah,
And so the needs there are much more to be soothed and secure and safe, because we don't know how to regulate our own nervous systems.
yeah,
We don't know how to calm ourselves whenever we are babies and young children. When we get to the teenage years, it's more about empowerment. It's about finding our voice. It's
Yeah,
about learning to make decisions and navigate consequences. And it
nice.
really is that process of individuation, of becoming your own person
Okay.
and getting ready to live your life as the adult who has to take care of yourself,
Yes.
and is no longer reliant on caregivers or adults, at least not in the same way or to the same
Mm.
degree. And so the inner teenager can often have more of that anger and that rebellion because they're trying to figure out who they are and what's their voice and what are my opinions, how do I want to live my life. And so often with the inner teenager, it's about allowing that version of ourselves to speak and to express all their emotions, no matter what they are, and not censor themselves. So to be really empowered that, like, I trust you, you can do this. Um, almost like I'm going to be there for you, cheering you on, but not trying to tell you exactly what to do and control your every decision. And so the inner teenager work is often when somebody says, I just have so much anger inside of me. Like I have rage and I don't like little things are just making me blow up. I said, that is
Yeah,
probably the inner teenager.
entertaining.
And I encourage them to do some connecting with that version of themselves to be able to say, like, what's going on? How did you what did you need as a teenager that maybe you didn't get? How were you treated or spoken to? And what message did that send to you? And
Yeah,
how can I empower you and listen to you and let you get that rage and anger out? Because, like you
awesome.
said, if we don't get it out, it stays stuck and it recycles and it builds and it can cause health issues,
Exactly.
and just really be a burden. So I think it's more about soothing and safety with the inner child, and it's more
Yeah.
about empowerment and finding your voice and expressing all the intense feelings that come with teenagehood.
Yeah, exactly. I really align with that and understand what you mean. That adds some more color to, yeah, the experiences that you were having as a child, which you probably have some different thoughts and beliefs being developed during that time versus when you're moving into a teenage years, you have more, socialization is taking a priority, how you're fitting in with your peer group, as you said, individuation. How strong are you able to start building your identity? How much permission do you have from your family of
Yes.
origin, for example, to even exist? Maybe
Right.
that's a
And
first
be
place to
accepted.
start. Yeah,
Be
yeah.
accepted for who
So
you are and your decisions, right?
yeah. So that causes a lot of stress. That's something that I've dealt with also in my family and a lot of people who I've met alongside this journey. And
Yeah.
it kind of takes me to another point again and looking for that acceptance, not being able to find it in the family.
Yeah.
And, there are some people who find it in a social group or within a certain
Yeah.
role that they play, such as a high academic achiever, for example. They can escape the family drama this way, or, someone is acting out perhaps in a more negative way. But the importance of community in this
Mm.
journey is also something that I've been paying even more attention to. Are you aware of the Adult Children of Alcoholic and Dysfunctional Families program, the ACA 12-step program?
I am not, but it sounds excellent just from the title
Yeah,
alone.
it's a really interesting program. So it's a 12-step group based off of like the AA, right? So this one is called Adult Children of Alcoholics and Dysfunctional Families, ACOA.
Okay.
That's actually how I came across reparenting. That's how I found out about this a few
Oh,
years ago. It was in a podcast, The Adult Child. I don't know if you know, with Andrea. It's a really good podcast also. And from there, I fell into this journey of discovering what everything is, that's happened in my life. And then also doing all the psychoeducation, the trauma research, and then starting to do the inner work. Um, and something that I've been struggling with is finding the right um, safe enough communities
yes.
to collaborate with others on this reparenting journey because much of it is relational trauma and relational wounding. And that must
Mhm.
be addressed in safe relationships so that you can have
Correct.
reparative experiences, right? And so,
Yes.
how have your clients been managing that challenge? Because again, we can also take a step back, and there's a loneliness epidemic across the Western world. So it's not even only traumatized people; it's just in general a problem that we're facing in this society. And
Yes.
so, how have some of your clients been working on that?
Yeah, yeah, great point. I think one of the main questions that people will ask me too is, especially if they've experienced codependent tendencies in some of
Yeah,
their relationships in the past, they'll say, do I just have to be alone forever in order to feel healed and whole, right? And I say, no, we are social beings. We are meant to be in community with one another. We are wired that way. And so the goal is not to be an island isolated on our own. It's really interdependence, right? Interdependence saying, I know who I am as a whole and complete individual. I'm addressing my own needs and having my own back.
yeah,
And I'm asking for support from safe individuals. And the safety piece is so important
yeah,
because for everybody, it's hard to be vulnerable. It's hard to put yourself out there and be authentic and honest and show all parts of ourselves because that
yeah,
hasn't always been safe in the past.
yeah,
It's led
indeed.
to rejection and criticism and abandonment and some really painful consequences. And so that understandably causes us to be hesitant and to say, this is not, these parts of me are not okay to share with others. And, it can even be difficult kind of knowing how to look for the red flags and how to make decisions in relationships where you are revealing yourself and being vulnerable over a period of time when a person has proven that they are going to treat your heart with tenderness and respect. And so I often say to clients, sometimes at the beginning of this journey, it is easier to do some of this healing work
Mm.
outside the context of intimate relationships
It's been a relationship. Yeah,
because it's easier to turn inward and focus on yourself when you don't have the temptation to fall into old patterns of focusing on everybody else and trying to prove
yeah,
yourself and be a chameleon and adapt and be what everybody expects or wants. But then at some point in the journey, it's actually imperative to reach out and create that safe community, like you said, to really fully heal and
fully
to
go.
really teach yourself not everybody is going to treat me like I've been
Yes.
treated in the past. And as real concrete proof that I have value. People
Yeah,
want to be around me, and I deserve that. I deserve to
yeah,
feel good and to be able to go to people and say I'm struggling and to provide that support to them as well, right? Like
yeah.
reciprocal. So some of my clients have found it beneficial to do in addition to their individual work on their own, to do, for example, like Codependence Anonymous
Okay.
group,
Yeah.
or like I have some clients who are experiencing grief or who are experiencing maybe navigating divorce after emotional abuse. There are a lot of groups that specifically focus on those issues.
Those
And
topics.
I recommend, if you can find something locally, because in person can be really beautiful. If you
Yeah.
can't or you don't feel comfortable doing that, there are now so many offerings online where you can meet with
Yes.
people from across the globe at whatever time works for you and share what you want to when you want to. I also offer a group coaching program where we touch on many different topics, including reparenting. And
Okay.
it's a small group with 12 people, and we meet for
Oh, that's
8 weeks
nice.
once a week. And it's really beautiful to watch how helpful it is to see people sharing and other people resonating and saying, I get that. I've been there. That's really hard. Here's what worked for me. Maybe you could try this. When they come and say, I had a victory today. Like
Mm.
I
Yeah,
I
it's
feel
really
really
nice.
proud. The whole group is like, that is awesome. They're sending hearts in the chat and they're, congratulating them and clapping. And it really takes it to the next level. So I recommend something like that if you don't want to do it in a therapeutic environment, even looking for, I have some clients who've gone on solo travel trips where
Yeah.
everybody on that trip is by themselves and looking to meet other
Yeah.
people and bonding through the traveling experience and adventures and going to new places has been like lifelong friendships have formed from that and they live in all
Yeah.
different parts of the world. So I do really emphasize whether that's I want to volunteer at a local place that really holds meaning for me and you're going to find
Yeah.
like-minded people and it's practice in trying to discern who deserves to be a VIP in my life,
Mm.
who
Understood.
deserves, who has created a safe environment for me to share my heart with. And the people have to earn that
Yeah.
because it's so special to open up and share with somebody that we really want to learn how to do that in a healthy, safe way so that we can get the
Yeah,
full benefits of that community. And I'm so
exactly.
glad you mentioned that because I think that you're right. There's really a lack of social support and people aren't sure where to turn.
Right to turn. There are not many um yeah, safe places, because so many people are struggling. I mean, it depends on where you are geographically, but for example, in the US, there's not such a strong access to mental health resources as there are in Europe, for example, or in Canada, where
Yeah.
the government has some subsidies, to help provide those resources. But one thing I found that's ironic here, even in Europe, so I have paid mental health care. But I've noticed that if I go through the public system, which is free, normally I have a waiting list of about 4 to 6 months. It can be shorter also, but first of all, is the wait. If you're in a crisis moment, it would be difficult. And second is that the people who are generally working there are not the most skilled. And
Ah,
they're also not the most motivated because they're working for the government organization, right? So that's some of the challenges that I found. And you can go outside to look for private people, but that quickly becomes expensive.
yes,
And
yes.
so then you're like kind of back at square one trying to locate safe communities, right? And that's something that I'm also really trying to help, to help solve that and address that problem as well.
That is so beautiful.
Yeah,
What a
we need
gift
that.
that you are giving to your community and even
Yeah,
just through your podcast and all of your work. I mean, and your vulnerability that you share your story. Like I think
yeah, yeah,
we are vulnerable and willing to take that first step and say, this is some of what I've went through, that
yeah.
really encourages others to feel comfortable coming forward too.
Yeah, yeah, I agree with that. As we move on towards wrapping the call up, I would like to ask some questions about what kind of products you offer. You mentioned you offer coaching. Do you have any books available? I saw you have a workshop coming up also. Maybe you'd like to let them know about that.
Yeah, thank you so much for that opportunity. I try to offer a wide range of services at different price points to try to reach as many people as possible. So
Yeah.
I do have on my website, which is letgowithlo.com. I do have a store which has a lot of different worksheets. It has meditations. It actually has past workshops that I've done, like recordings, and it has slide decks all available at different price points on a variety of topics, mental health related. I do have a specific focus on healing from codependency, people pleasing, and perfectionism.
Okay.
And I work with a lot of individuals who experience anxiety and overwhelm. We do somatic grounding practices, inner
Nice.
child work, really learning how to regulate the nervous system. And so there are resources on there that you can download immediately and keep. I also have a free authenticity guide. A big question that people ask me is, I feel like I don't know who I am. I feel like a stranger to myself because I have
Yeah.
been so used to accommodating everybody else and kind of morphing into what they want. How do I
Mm,
get back in touch with myself? So I have a free download on my website that is, an authenticity guide that's I believe it's 9 or 10 pages. That's a really nice resource with a lot of different ideas. I do workshops on Zoom, I would say about every other month on a variety
okay.
of topics. They're live, they're 90 minutes, and there is a 30-minute Q&A after the presentation. And then you get the replay and you get the slide deck, and there's
Okay.
usually like a handout bonus. So
Nice.
as you mentioned, the one coming up in November is actually around boundary setting. And I like to do that in November because
Nice.
as we enter holiday season, we're often encountering a lot more commitments and it
Mm,
can be stressful and hectic. And we're seeing a lot of people that we might struggle with or that we
yeah.
might, you know, not be sure how to navigate some of those situations, whether it's family, friends, work events, right, with our colleagues. So we really touch on how to take care of yourself, speak up, and have your own back, specifically throughout the holidays, but you can certainly use these tools year round. So that is coming up on November 18th, and you can get information on my website to purchase a seat for that. And then I do individual and group coaching and therapy. So therapy is available to clients who reside in Pennsylvania in the United States, because that's where my license is. And coaching is open to anyone in the world. And so I do sessions, some clients will meet weekly, some every other week, some monthly, and we work one-on-one on goals that we set together. And the group coaching I usually do a couple of times a year. I'm in the middle of a group right now, so the
Okay.
next one won't be, I haven't decided yet, but it will probably be in 2025. But that's nice if you want a little bit cheaper, and also you want it to be time sensitive. Like you want
Yeah.
8 weeks that I'm really going to devote, and then you can use the resources long into the future. So also, if you're looking for a community or some more free resources, my social media is the place to go. So my
Yeah.
handle's Let Go with Low. That's Instagram and Facebook. And I try to provide a lot of resources, coping skills, encouragement, and it's a really supportive community where people will comment and share and like, and just it's high vibes, it's supportive, and it's like-minded people who are doing the work all together because we are really all in this together. I mean,
Yeah.
everybody is on
Exactly.
their own personal journey. We can't do it alone, and if we
Yeah.
can encourage and support each other, we're going to have a lot more success. So,
Yeah. I really appreciate it. Thank you for sharing that. That's such a beautiful message. You do a lot. I really appreciate and admire all the work that you are
hmm.
doing. It's you have a bit of a different approach because it's your career. It's your profession. So you spend like your entire life dedicated to this, and I'm kind of just building it up. On the side, kind of to support myself and just to really encourage and inspire others. And so
Love
thank you
it.
again for that. And I hope that the people will be able to connect with you who think that
Nice.
you could be a help and a support for them. You can find all of our contact details in the show notes. And yes, thank you again for being here. We'll catch you
Thank
next
you
time.
so much. Appreciate it.